Hello, everyone. Hello, Maureen. Good
Hi.
afternoon. So, there is a question from one of the subscribers on Instagram. Her name is Katya. I don't know
Katja.
her last name, but it's Katya. And she asks about, it's about management now. So, how would you describe an ideal ELT manager?
Okay. I think all of us have been managed by good managers, and we've all been managed by not so good managers. And I do think there are certain qualities that good managers have, whether they're ELT managers or in any other field. I think once when we were talking before, I said there are really teachers only like to be managed by people who are teachers, because we want those who manage us to understand what teaching is and what the demands of it are. We don't like to be managed by finance directors or anything like that, you know. So an ideal ELT manager also has to already, the starting point is they have to be an experienced teacher themselves, so that they can walk the talk. And so if they observe you, they can give you useful feedback, they can point you in the direction of useful resources, etc. So they have to have a professional knowledge and background. Also, in terms of your CPD, they have to have a knowledge of the profession, so they can say to you, okay, you're at this point, and here are the options for you going forward. You could work in this, and this is what we need to do to help you to do that. So they have to have a knowledge of the profession. In terms of personal qualities, I think an ideal ELT manager needs to be transparent with their staff. They need to be respectful of their staff, and they need to be even-handed. In other words, they need to treat everybody the same. I've worked with managers who clearly had favorites, and it's very damaging to any organization if that happens. And I think another two things which an ideal ELT manager needs is they need to have a really good memory of what it's like to be a teacher. Often when people are promoted into management, it's like they forget all this stuff. They forget all the things that used to really annoy them when they were a teacher, and they just do them. Now they're a manager, and you think, what, have you had a memory loss? Why are you giving people information about their timetable the day before, when that was something you complained about every single week of your working life, for example? So you really need to remember what it's like to be a teacher and what annoyed you as a teacher, so you don't annoy your teachers in the same way. And I also think you really need to know your staff as individuals. If you don't know your staff as people, whether they're your teachers or your admin staff, you can't manage those people properly. You know, you can't support them. You don't know when to push them. You don't know when to back off. If you don't know there are changes in their personal circumstances, suddenly that a parent has fallen ill and is in hospital, and that's taking a lot of their mental energy dealing with that. If you don't know them as people, you don't know how to timetable them, how to develop them, when to support them. There's a quote I use a lot from the one and only the boss, Bruce Springsteen, which I use a lot in management training, and a line in one of his songs, which I think all managers should remember, is, all I want is someone to talk to and a little of that human touch. And I think that's what you want from your manager, someone to talk to when you've got a problem, and a little bit of human understanding that you are a person, not a machine. I hope that answers your question, Katja.
Yeah. So no, the question is now how to become one, you know, or how to find one like that.
Yeah, that's another question.
Yeah, but I like, speaking of favorites, I think I mean, it's in a way that happens sometimes in the classroom when you teach group. I mean, we're all human. You sometimes do have favorites, you know, like really. Yeah. So, and when you're managing, you like, I mean, you tend to like, so what you, if you're like, how to control yourself, like what to do with that if you're feeling that you have somebody who's a favorite.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of your professional persona, isn't it? Every group of teachers have some teachers that are easier than others.
Mm-hmm.
As every group of friends has some friends that are easier than others, as you say, that's just human nature. But I think when you're a manager, whatever you personally feel, you have to deal with everybody the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that it's not always the same two people that get the nice timetables or the same two people that get the interesting opportunities. Sometimes actually consciously working with a more difficult staff member is fantastic training for you as a manager.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to see past that difficulty and think, right, who's behind that? And move that baggage that you've got out of the way and just try and deal with that person. Because very few people wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to go into school today and be absolutely horrible. You know, most people are just trying to do their best in the world. And it's how you interact with them that makes the difference. You have to work on yourself as a manager and not even betray it by your body language or a little roll of the eyes. You know, when someone comes into your office, yes, Anita, what is it? That you're treating everyone the same, and that's hard work.
It's a very hard job, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good job though.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. And I think one more question, and it's because we've been already talking for 40 minutes.
Wow, we can talk, Anita.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we'll have 3 days in Moscow, or maybe a bit more. A question from Svetikova Yulia. Actually, she's one of the moderators of my Teachers Teach Teachers project. So, and she's part of the project. But she recently started her own school. So she's a very like a baby boss, as you say. How her question is actually how to help teachers, you know, feel that they belong to the organization, you know, this feeling of that we're all one team, and also how to stimulate them, maybe make them attend internal CPD events.
Okay. I think that when you start a school, you have a blank page for creating your organizational culture. And organizational culture, we'll be talking about this in Moscow, is hugely, hugely, hugely important. I think, if I'm being honest, that a mistake that a lot of new school owners make is to want to be friends with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we want everybody to be our friend and we want everyone to love us. You know, but this is not like a talent competition. You know, you can have a professional friendly relationship with your staff, but you don't necessarily have to, they don't have to love you and you don't have to love them. Mm-hmm. You know, you're not married to them. You're working together and you have to have respect for each other's professional abilities. And you can be what I call a professional friend and know them as people, as I've said, and support them. But I think that helping people feel part of the organization is often done by very simple things, like if it's possible, everybody comes to a meeting once a week at the same time, and they know that it's always going to be 4 o'clock on a Friday, and that's when everybody comes. Or you might say, right, we're going to come to our meeting, everybody brings something to eat, or once a month we'll have a school lunch, or you bring a cake when it's somebody's birthday. These little small things that you do, somebody gets good feedback from students, you recognize this generally. It's the little actions that you do that kind of pull you together into being a team and working together as a team. So you're recognizing the contribution each person makes, and everybody knows that their contribution is just as important. You know, it's no good having fantastic teachers in a school if your school toilets are dirty. So the contribution of the cleaner is just as important as the contribution of the teacher to the well-being of the whole organisation. I think in terms of how to make people come to inset, you know, apart from dragging them in by their hair, I don't really think you can make people attend. Sometimes people say it's in your contract that you have to attend in-service training, but doing something because it's in your contract isn't exactly very motivational for you, is it? So I'm doing it because I have to do it. So there are a couple of things perhaps that Julia might like to consider. One of them is asking her staff what CPD they would like to have. Encouraging your staff to design your in-service training program does a couple of things for you, actually. One, it lets you know where your teachers feel they need help and support and input, and that's very important for you. Secondly, if you see your organisation developing in this direction with a particular client group, it's a chance for you to provide training in that, so your teachers are trained when you get to meet that client group. And thirdly, getting the teachers themselves to deliver the inset sessions is a very good way of encouraging people to attend. Teachers, I have found, often really like sessions where other teachers say, this is what I did in my class.
Yeah, I know. That's what my project is about.
You know, and we all like that, and we all like going to any session like that at a conference or wherever it happens to be, where somebody says, I've got a class like this, they had a problem like that, this is what I did, and this bit worked and this bit didn't work, and then you can perhaps try it out together. So I think there are three things. I think one is planning for perhaps development, so your teachers are prepared for that development. Two is asking your teachers what CPD they'd like, so that gives you a more holistic view of the staff. And the third thing is asking teachers to deliver inset. And just on a sidebar to that, if you're a manager that observes your teachers, in feedback on observations, it can be really motivating for a teacher when the observer says, and I really like the way you worked with that reading text. Oh, it was really creative, you know, and the students really liked it. Would you give a 20-minute inset session on that for everybody? Because I think people would find it very useful. So pulling something from observation to inset for your teachers actually makes observation more valuable for everybody as well, because it has kind of an immediate impact. But if you're giving inset sessions on our new database for reports, teachers aren't going to be that thrilled.
Oh, I like databases.
You're odd, Anita.
Thank you. No, sorry, I think one more question. Okay, it was from Irina Lutsenko, and she asked, do you think it's harder now for schools to find teachers? I mean, I know the context is a little bit different here in Russia or in the UK, but here lots of teachers tend to go freelance. Some teachers believe it's better. So, like, is it harder for schools to find good teachers now? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is. I actually think it is. When we were speaking about this before, I think I said to you that my experience in the summer, both in IH London and in University of the Arts, was that it was becoming harder to secure teachers. I think perhaps teachers are in more of a powerful position than they were previously. Perhaps in that there are more opportunities. People can go freelance, people can deliver online classes. There are more agencies globally that are set up for this sort of thing. So teachers have a little bit more control over where they work and where they don't work. So I do feel in a way it's a little bit more of a buyer's market. So schools, if they were, the difficulty with schools, of course, though, is schools want teachers who are incredibly flexible. depending on their demands. So they're not always in a position to offer a permanent contract to a teacher because they don't have that security of future employment. I'm talking more about language schools rather than universities. So language schools depend very heavily on a core of permanent teachers and a pool of hourly paid teachers that they can pull in when they have demand, and they're not committed to if they don't have demand. So the school is not offering, if you like, commitment to the teacher. So the school should be unsurprised if the teacher doesn't always offer commitment back. And the teacher will take a certain number of hours with you and look at getting more hours elsewhere and building up their, I think it's called teaching portfolio, I think is the word. And if they get a better offer, then they will take that offer. I do think it's harder for schools who cannot offer secure contracts and terms and conditions to attract good teachers. And of course, what school owners and directors often forget, I think, is that the world of ELT in most places is quite small, and teachers talk to other teachers, and teachers know other teachers. So if you're a teacher, you know really pretty quickly what's a good school to get some hours in and what's not a good school to get some hours in. So school owners and directors would do well to consider the kind of offer they're putting to teachers, because teachers will talk to other teachers about that. And good schools will get lots of applications because people are keen to work there, because the reputation for teacher support and CPD and everything else, terms and conditions, is good. And the ones whose offer is less positive will keep struggling, I think. Does that answer your question?
It was Irina's question. I hope it does. Yeah, no, for some, I don't know. I don't know, maybe just me, because I'm not looking for a job. And I mean, there are not many good, I mean, so like if we look at it from this perspective, that it's harder to find good teachers, and like schools have to compete for good teachers, and teachers have more choice. How come I don't really know many good schools like people would want to work for, you know? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think that's partly because if I think of school, let me take as an example schools in the International House World Organization, which is 150 schools plus worldwide. They offer a limited number of permanent contracts. And once they've staffed those permanent contracts, they don't offer any more, because that's based on their supply and demand, that they know we'll need minimum X number of teachers to cover Y number of students over Z terms. So that's their maths, if you like. So what they want then is, if demand peaks, they have good local people that they can pull in for a couple of weeks and then not. So maybe what teachers can do is send their CV to perceived good schools in their area, hoping to pick up some hours when the demand peaks. But I think, in my experience in the UK, it might be different. It's unlikely to lead to a permanent contract.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same here. But so this is kind of, I mean, but still, I know that many people work for several schools, have like a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there, and they consider themselves being employed. But actually, I mean, they're not. It's freelance. You're
not employed. And you're only employed really if your rights are protected.
Yeah. So it's a very weird sense of security. I mean, it's false sense of security. So I'm trying.
It is, because you might have hours here, there, and there, but at any time, there and there can stop offering you hours. And you don't have them. So you're not employed per se, but you have multiple employers.
Maybe. Yeah, and you're not employed anywhere. So I mean. Okay, there are different schemes. I think we can't talk about it online, how staff can be employed. Yeah.
Sure.
And it's different in the UK. Or maybe not. We're not talking about that. So there is one comment from Irina. Irina Rogova, she's from Belarus, from Mogilov. She's And yeah, so I think it's just her comments on the question of how to encourage people to attend internal CPD events. So she believes that we forgot to mention that teachers, that bosses should make sure their teachers aren't overloaded with long hours of work.
Oh, completely, Irina, completely. Because if you put a CPD event on at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
you know, don't be surprised if people don't want to go to it at the end of the working week, or if you're loading them with marking or loading them with preparation. So yeah, I often think with CPD, it's almost like feeding a puppy. Well, you're supposed to feed a puppy little and often, rather than like one huge plate of food. And I think the same is true as well for CPD, really. Little is better than like one huge watch. And yes, being overloaded, that's a really important factor.
So the topics of today: overlearning, overloaded with work, and feeding a puppy. That's a brief summary of what we've talked about. One more final on CPD. So should teachers, like if it's internal training, should teachers be paid for attending CPD? I know some people who have a contract, yeah, they have 40 hours. Should this be included in their hours? Or for some people who like have just are paid per hour, should they be paid for attending this CPD event if it's internal and mandatory?
Yeah, I think this is a real hot potato. Actually, I think this is a really difficult question, because ideally you would pay your teachers to attend CPD, because the CPD is going to improve their classroom practice, which will improve student satisfaction. So you've created, if you like, a virtuous circle. However, many organizations that I know of do not pay for CPD. It also depends on the type of CPD, Anita. If you're having a little half an hour show and tell session, you might not pay for that. If you want people to attend a full day of training, you might not pay them for that, but you won't ask them to make up their hours. So they will get, if you like, that time for free. A good organization will consider the cost benefit analysis of CPD and say, well, yes, we will pay you, or we'll claw, but you can claw back an hour and we'll cover it. But in my experience, organizations, language teaching organizations, are reluctant to pay for CPD, which I personally don't agree with. I think that if you want your professionals to become better professionals, you should invest in your staff. And one way you do that is by investing in their CPD. But many organizations think, well, we've provided a speaker, we've provided a room, and we love you so much, we've even provided some bottles of water. What else do you want, you know? So I don't know what your situation is there, but in my experience, it's unusual to be paid.
No, I know. Yeah. In some schools, I mean, they do. In one of the schools I worked for, it was funny. We were not employed there. Nobody was employed. We were like, like freelancing anyway. So, and we had to cancel. It was usually they had like a whole day seminar once a month, and we had to cancel all our lessons to attend it, and it was mandatory, you know. And we didn't have choice, or we didn't have a say on what the topic was. So yeah, with mandatory CPD is kind of
yeah, that's not really fair, is it? Because particularly if you're a freelancer, you know, by not being able to work somewhere else, you're effectively losing money to pay for that CPD that you might not even want to go to.
Yeah, that's why.
So that's a great case study of bad CPD management right there.
Yes. Oh yes. No, there are some good ones, but again, usually more interesting to talk about bad ones, isn't it?
Always.
So can you, like for those ones who just joined or who started watching from the end, can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to do in Moscow when you come here in January?
I know, in my big coat. In Moscow in January, I'm doing a session for your people talking about managing your own CPD, which we talked about a little here today.
freelancers, yeah.
For the business forum, I'll be talking about performance management in English language teaching. That's the first day. What is performance management? How do we recognize it? How do we manage it? How do we develop it, etc. And the second day, we'll be talking exclusively about CPD, continual professional development for staff. What types of CPD there are, what types of CPD staff want, how to define and devise an effective CPD program that includes all your staff, because school managers, you know, manage admin staff as well as academic staff, and you need to consider that as well. So the two key topics are performance management on the first day. I'm really excited to hear what delegates think of my view of performance management. I did some research with some teachers in London about their views of performance management and what they want from their manager in terms of managing their performance, which I'll be bringing to Moscow. And I'm very interested to hear the responses of delegates to that. And the second day, looking at different aspects of CPD.
Whew. Wow, really sounds really exciting and sounds useful. And I don't think we have like many events. Like I have never heard of like a whole day on CPD, for example, or performance management. So these topics sound quite new to me here. But maybe because I'm new to like managing. You know.
I think, from my understanding, that certainly with Dimitri, there hasn't been an event that's focusing on these more management style topics. So I think this is perhaps a newer thing coming to Moscow, which is even more exciting because then we can just work it out as we go along.
Super. Sounds really, really exciting. Thank you very much for talking to me like for an hour. Sorry, no, it's a little bit shorter because there was something with the connection. Okay, so I'm going to stop live now. So goodbye to everyone.
Bye, and hope to see some of you in Moscow in January.